Skyrim is an extremely popular game. There's no doubt about that. It's been ported to pretty much every console known to man, um, even the Nintendo Switch. It's been ported to VR, and it's pretty much universally kind of put forward as one of the best, one of the better open world games, at least for its time. For the longest time, I didn't really get the hype. Skyrim didn't really interest me that much. I'd heard great things about it, and I got into Skyrim probably a couple years after it was released on PC. My I'm pretty much a Nintendo fanboy, and my family only basically my parents restricted me to only one console for the longest time. Um, Not that that's a bad thing. But so when given a choice of consoles, I tended to stick with the Nintendo side of things. When everyone else was playing Skyrim, I was playing whatever was whatever was out at the time. Kind of, you know, basically I went with the GameCube, I went with the Wii, that sort of thing. So I largely missed out on Skyrim. Um, until, like I said, a couple years afterwards, when I finally got a laptop that could run Skyrim. Um,
Straight to the point, eh? No need for tedious hows and whys. I like that.
after hearing so much good things about it from my friends, I decided to buy it and give it a go. I put about, I want to say 10 to 15 hours into it, and the glowing reviews and the widespread popularity that I had seen, I didn't get it. Skyrim was just kind of boring to me. And I didn't really understand why it had such huge popularity. I mean, it was an interesting game, but it definitely had some faults. So, kind of fast forward until this past year, and I was talking with some friends after getting Breath of the Wild and putting some hours into that. And I like Breath of the Wild, but I'm not sure the I didn't buy into the whole this is the best Zelda game ever made. Because there were just other Zelda games that I thought were better than Breath of the Wild. But a lot of my friends seem to hold it in pretty high regard. So I started talking with them about why I wasn't getting as much out of it and why they were getting into it. I mean, some of it's the hype, honestly. Some of it's the hype surrounding things. People get hyped up about what other people are talking about and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I thought there was a little bit more to it than that. And I've come to discover it was actually the mindset that I was in, and for the time being, that really prevented me from enjoying the game to the fullest. And I'm not saying that that was wrong, it's just I was expecting something else out of the game when I first opened it up. And when I didn't get that, I was dissatisfied because the experiences that I was expecting, or that I was wanting actually, Skyrim wasn't giving me. And it doesn't. It didn't give me the experiences that I was expecting, and it does a pretty terrible job at giving me the experiences that I was kind of expecting. So, what changed? Well, I expected differently, essentially. I recently picked the game back up on the Nintendo Switch, and I started finding I really enjoyed myself. I started getting more immersed into the world. I started actually messing around and having fun, doing various other things. I got it on the PC to mess around with mods, that sort of thing. And I was really wondering, and it just kind of furthered the idea that the reason I didn't have fun with it in the first place was because of the mindset I had coming into the game. In order to kind of explain why I had that mindset and why I had those expectations, I need to kind of preface it with some of the background information as to like what video games I like and why I like them. Um, I'm a really big fan of story-driven action RPGs or action adventure games. Um, and I think a lot of that comes because of the fact that I was sick uh, for a lot of my childhood. I went from an active, outgoing, outdoorsy type kid to kind of the stereotypical shut-in nerd just because I wasn't able to be active because I was sick too often. Um, and because of that, video games kind of were my release, essentially. They were a way to distract me from what was going on so that I wasn't kind of bogged down with me being sick all the time, that sort of thing. And because of that, I have a really strong philosophy of how everyone's important. Everyone can make an impact on the world. Everyone can change the world in some way. Just by being them and by having an impact on the people around them. Everyone's important. And to that, kind of along those lines, I wanted games that kind of promoted that idea. Games that made the hero kind of central to the world, essentially. Central to the plot line, that sort of thing. And oh boy. I might die here. Anyways, stuff that was kind of central to the plot, made the hero, like, you're the chosen one. You are the reason that you are going to be what saves the world from calamity, and the world essentially revolves around you as you figure out, your character grows, and the people around you grow, and you have a direct impact on the world. Skyrim doesn't really give that. You're a no-name main character, essentially, who kind of just appears. The world very much moves on without you. You're not really central to the world at all. You are essentially saving it from calamity, that's for certain. But at the same time, you're not really crucial to the world. Like I said, the world kind of moves on without you. And building a living and breathing fantasy world, that's a good thing. If the player character walks away and the world feels like it moves on without him and it still interacts, that's a good thing, because that means that you have oh boy, I shouldn't be here. It means that you've successfully developed a living and breathing world, and the player will feel that, essentially. But at the same time, it does make the character seem small and insignificant. So where does that leave me now? Well, essentially, when I first started playing Skyrim, I wanted a fantasy experience that made me feel big, important, central to the world, such that the story evolved around me and interacted, in that my character was directly involved with the main ultimate storyline of the world, essentially. So I came into Skyrim, and you're just dropped in this huge, vast land with mountains and prairies and large cities and bandits and just hosts of NPCs. And I felt like I wasn't getting anything out of it because your character isn't important. They don't grow. So you don't feel like you're getting any better, essentially. Yeah, you level up, but the combat's pretty basic, actually. compared to a number of other games. So what you're left with is kind of a bland numbers increase, and yeah, you learn some new spells, etc. But it's not really, I guess, huge. Or it's just doesn't really feel that way at the beginning portion of the game, and is really slow to kind of pick up there. So Skyrim largely was a pass for me at the time, but I came back and I was more I wasn't really looking for that experience anymore. I was more interested in getting lost in a fantasy world, interacting with a living and breathing world where you meet guards that talk about getting shot in the knee with an arrow, as the really old meme, kind of to bring that old meme back up, or just being a part of a fantasy world, interacting, making choices, handling side quests, exploring the vast landscape, using magic and kind of interacting with different things, and then eventually modding the game and just kind of exploring around with that. And I think that's the thing. Skyrim probably doesn't, most definitely doesn't, provide the best story experience. I don't think there's a doubt about that. But it does provide the best exploration and kind of lore immersive experience. Maybe not the best, but like it does provide a really good one. And so coming into that and wanting that out of Skyrim made the game a lot more enjoyable and allowed me to kind of get back into the game. And I think that realization kind of opened my eyes and made me realize that a lot of the times, like, what a person wants from a game can actually directly impact their enjoyment of said game. And I know that sounds kind of basic, but it's really interesting, because when we give recommendations to other people, it kind of expounds upon the whole everyone experiences a video game in a different way, and by experiencing a game in a different way, we kind of all find unique experiences in what we take from the game. And largely that's why someone likes or dislikes a specific game, is because that's not it's what they want from a game. It's what they want from a video game. So with Skyrim, because I wanted that experience that made me feel important, that made me that were like action RPGs, where as you progress through the game, you mechanically get better at the game, which means you essentially do more damage, etc., and don't die as often. But you also level up and get your character grows along with you as well, and that also shows in the story. So as you progress through the story, your character grows and the companions around him grow and interact and depend on various characters, like various depend on each other, etc. You don't really get that out of Skyrim. And so coming into it with the expectation or the desire to get that sort of thing out of it was just it made it so that like I couldn't enjoy the game. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to enjoy Skyrim. You don't have to change your mindset if you aren't enjoying the game. Like, everyone likes games for different reasons. And if you're wanting to play something, if you want a specific experience from a game, or you want from gaming in general, then that's exactly what video games are supposed to be. It's supposed to be seeking a specific experience that you want to play and mess around with, and that sort of thing. But I find it extremely interesting that just kind of you need to, when deciding whether or not to recommend a game to someone, you need to check their expectations of what they want from a game. If they, just because they hear a game is good, a game might be fantastic, but just because it's a fantastically well put together game doesn't mean it's right for them. And so to that effect, like, the reason I like action RPGs, as I said before, is that feeling of character growth, that feeling of getting better at the game. So you as a player are growing, and so is your character as you go along, both in story development and in like stats and power-ups and things, and you get more and more powerful, etc. But with Skyrim, I mean, you really need to go into it with the exploration in mind, with getting immersed in the world, with exploring. I already said exploration, but messing around with mods. It's more of a fantasy playground than it is some deep and interesting story experience. And so that's I mean, that's largely why I didn't enjoy Skyrim for the longest time, is because I wanted something else from video games. I wanted something else from gaming in general, and Skyrim just didn't fit. It didn't fit with what I wanted. And it's just interesting with the kind of exploring the kind of mindsets that people go into that are the reason why someone likes a specific game. I've said it about 15 billion times, but Skyrim's good for exploration. It's good for getting immersed, like being in an immersive fantasy world, a really well-crafted fantasy world that lives and breathes even when you aren't there, when you aren't around. And so with that in mind, I just found it really interesting that kind of your expectations of a game, as well as the mindset that you're in, what you want from that game, can be a deciding factor on whether or not you enjoy the game. So you can look at a game and see its reviews and see it has all 10 out of 10 reviews, but it could still be a bad game for you. And I think not a lot of people, we don't see a lot of people talk about that sort of thing. It's, people touch on it a little bit here and there when they describe why they like a game, how the mechanics feel satisfying, but I don't think they really dive deep into what does this experience really provide for the for you as a person. What does the experience really delve into and make you ask about yourself? What aspect of yourself are you able to reflect in this game? That sort of thing. With Skyrim, you're kind of placed in a position where you can interact with people. It's kind of like you get to put yourself in a fantasy situation and role play how you would act in that situation, that sort of thing. And kind of put yourself into the game rather than have the game tell you something. It's more so making up your own stories than having the game tell you a story and make you feel important to that story. You need to write your own stories, and you need to be important to your own stories, essentially. So yeah, with that in mind, Skyrim's a really interesting game in that it provides something that hadn't been done up until Skyrim, really, as it hadn't given a wide player base the same kind of experience for a long time, or really ever. And so Skyrim brought something, an experience, for the fantasy open world RPG genre that really kickstarted something in the video game industry. I mean, we're still feeling the effects with everything having to be open world now. Skyrim, I would argue, is a large part of why that happened. And so with that, you kind of it really is important to look at, like, okay, what does being open world offer the player? What can it be good at? What can it do for the player, and what experience does it provide? What do they expect out of the game if it's tagged with being open world, essentially? And yeah, I just find it really interesting with how Skyrim just provided that experience. That pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the matter. Thank you guys if you made it this long. This is kind of a series that I'm messing around with, thinking of kind of doing, about kind of the different games and what mindset people either should go into them, or kind of what mindset I'm in when I enjoy a specific game, that sort of thing. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed me talking about kind of the mindset that behind why I didn't enjoy Skyrim at first and recently started enjoying Skyrim again for the first time, actually, and really getting into it. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this sort of video, and if you want to see me do more. I have a couple other ideas for games that I can talk about, and why the various mechanics are satisfying, and what experience and kind of mindset that I'm in when I play those games or want to play those games, and kind of explore that sort of side of gaming that I really feel people don't explore all that often. Anyways, once again, thank you for watching. My name's Rogera, and I'll see you in my next video.